A lot to talk about at the running back position heading into Week 13. Let's get to it. Welcome back from Thanksgiving weekend. I hope everybody had a great extended weekend, enjoyed all the extra football on Thursday and all the craziness in fantasy. And we've had, some injuries at the running back position in week 12, and that lends itself to some immediate help at the running back position heading into week 13. So right now, when you are adding players onto your roster, we are at the position in the season where you need to think about a couple different things. Some people have their playoff position locked in. Are you needing immediate help, or do you need to bolster that bench to make sure that you have all the assets you need heading into the playoffs? Are you a person that's on the precipice of making the playoffs? Do you need to make sure you have those wins to get in? Immediate running back help sounds pretty nice. And then what about the people that have already lost out on the playoffs? What is it for them? Well, they need to keep playing too. They need to keep playing for multiple reasons, but they need to keep playing. So obviously, immediate running back help helps those that, even though they're not in the playoffs, can play, spoiler. And that's what we want, right? We still want people active in our leagues. It makes for better play heading into, once again, the playoffs right around the corner. So, first off, number one asset that we can acquire for immediate help at the running back position. This guy, obviously, stock is boomed, spiked straight up for a short period of time. And that is Alexander Mattison. Alexander Mattison is still out there in about 19% of ESPN leagues, and he's a guy right now that I believe should be 100% rostered across the board when we talk about the fact that Dalvin Cook is out for at least 2 weeks, if not more. We're talking about a guy that is dealing with a serious enough injury that I can see him missing 3 or 4 weeks. But immediately, right now, Alexander Mattison will be the number one running back for Minnesota. And he has shown this year already a couple different times in relief for Dalvin Cook, while he was out on injury earlier in the season, that he can be a very good fantasy asset, scoring 23.1 PPR points in week 3 and 26.3 PPR points in week 5. That's damn good. And that is a guy right now obviously available in 19% of ESPN leagues, should be rostered across the board, and has immediate deployability. We're talking about a guy in week 13 who has an amazing matchup with the Detroit Lions. Teams haven't been passing on the Lions. They've been running on the Lions, and we should see a heavy workload for Alexander Mattison. And so a guy that has shown he also has chops in the passing game, has both upside and not only standard. He has immediate upside in standard, but upside in PPR as well. This guy has short-term RB2 value with upside of being an RB1 at any given week until further notice. At the very least, this is a guy that can help you get into the playoffs. If you're already set on the playoffs, obviously, if you got the extra roster spot, you don't see anything else to your liking, he's a great add. But this is a guy that's perfect for somebody who wants to either play spoiler or wants to get into the playoffs to add to their roster and deploy immediately either into that RB2 flex or RB1 position. And I'm looking at you guys that just lost Christian McCaffrey. This is a great fill-in, at least for the next couple weeks, while you try to figure out what you're going to do. And you know what? You might already have figured that out since you lost McCaffrey for such an extended period of time this year. But the fact is, Alexander Mattison for the next couple of weeks gives you RB2 with RB1 upside. Another guy that is giving you immediate RB2 value, probably maybe a little bit lower level RB2, is Jamaal Williams for the Detroit Lions. 69% roster, so 31% available out there. And another guy I think that should be rostered in minimum 85% of leagues right now. He has not only the rushing job right now with Swift out with a AC joint injury, and he could be out for multiple weeks. Swift wants to come back quick. Detroit wants to take their time with him. Why would they rush him back? They don't have any wins on the season. There's no point in bringing back an asset for your 2022 season, which obviously you're hoping is going to be better than 2021. So it's quite possible Jamaal Williams has this job locked down for a couple weeks as the lead back. And as we've seen in Detroit, they use their running backs quite a bit in the passing game, which elevates him quite a bit in PPR leagues. He still has very good value in standard as well, just not quite as much because he's obviously, I would expect him to catch minimum of 4 balls in week 13 going against Minnesota, which is not a great defense against running back. So Jamaal Williams, 69% rostered, has a great opportunity in week 13 to be a fill-in guy, a guy to help you possibly make that push to get into the playoffs or fill in that Christian McCaffrey void, or I don't know, maybe you're using JD McKissick. Who knows what piece you're trying to fill in for. Maybe you're had Harris. Damian Harris out of New England was doing good for you for a while, but now since Ramondre Stevenson's in there, you're trying to figure out how to fill these holes. These guys do it right now, and I just don't know what the long-term value is of Alexander Mattison, Jamaal Williams. So immediate value, they give you the ability to help get you in the playoffs. What they're going to do for you in the playoffs right now doesn't look like a lot because we are expecting Dalvin Cook, crossing the fingers, and Bo Swift, crossing the fingers, back for the playoffs. So if that happens, then these guys help you get in the playoffs. They don't help you in the playoffs. Another guy to watch right now could be actually a DFS play. I'm going to talk about him only because I do think he's going to have opportunity, and if he shines and maybe Jamaal Williams falls flat in week 13, then Jermar Jefferson has the ability to maybe get some work. So I don't think he's a guy in standard redraft formats that we're deploying, but in DFS, Jermar Jefferson's a guy that you could think about as a real cheap play that could go out there, is going to have at the very least some opportunity. And so far, he's only really played in 2 games, but in those 2 games, he has 2 touchdowns and he has been an explosive back. And if you go back to his time at Oregon State, Jermar Jefferson actually was a very explosive back for the Beavers. So he's a guy, honestly, that you could really keep your eye on. What if Swift's injury ends up being long-term? They just decide to shut him down for the rest of the season because they say, what the fuck, why are we even dicking around with this? We want to make sure Swift's fresh for next year, and he's been banged up all season long. Let's just shut him down. And then all of a sudden, maybe, like I said, Jamaal Williams just doesn't take the job and run with it, and Jermar Jefferson shines. There's reason to watch him, or just even possibly if you have, once again, the roster spot to use him as a speculative ad. But right now he's a watch list guy, a DFS play, a guy that does have the ability to get some touches in week 13. And like I said, maybe if he goes hot, Williams goes cold, and Detroit goes the hot hand approach, maybe they run with Jefferson. So a guy that I just want to keep my eyes on and see if maybe in week 14, if he's going to be somebody that's worth rostering and deploying if Swift is not back by then. I want to remind everybody to please like, share, and subscribe to the channel. I obviously trying to grow that subscription list. Want to keep bringing you this content, not just in season, but in the off season, because I actually believe working the off season is the biggest part to being competitive year in and year out in fantasy. And like the NFL, I treat the off season as just another season for fantasy. And that is what allows me to every year compete for the playoffs and compete for championships every single year. And I like to bring that knowledge to you in the offseason. I'm going to be doing some Fantasy 101 courses that are going to teach you some of the little nuances of some of the extra things that you can think about in fantasy that can maybe give you an edge over your opponent. So please like, share, and subscribe. I'm just going to keep bringing this content. Another running back to talk about that has RB2 upside immediately. And you know, we just don't know moving forward. We've just seen so much rotation with the Philadelphia backfield. But Boston Scott right now, only 21% rostered, highly available out there. Honestly, has a good shot at leading the Philly backfield in rushing in week 13, depending on what happens with Miles Sanders. So this is a guy that possibly has RB2 upside heading into week 13, where you have Miles Sanders continuing to struggle with injuries. Is he going to play? We don't know. He basically got sidelined the second half of week 12, despite the fact he was running for fucking, like 6 yards a carry, something crazy. Jordan Howard, he's dealing with a knee injury. We don't know when he's currently expected back. Philly basically phased out Kenneth Gainwell. He's been a non-factor. You got a good matchup this weekend. I really like the idea of possibly adding Boston Scott and deploying him. No matter what, I think he is going to get work. I think he has a shot no matter what at about 10, 12 touches, even if he's backing up Miles Sanders. And as we saw last week, he has the ability to easily out-touch Miles Sanders. He's scored more touchdowns than Miles Sanders this season. He's just right now been a better play, yet we deploy Miles Sanders over Boston Scott. So if you're desperate, you need immediate help, you are in desperation mode and you're trying to throw something against the wall and make it stick, Boston Scott might just stick for you. He's got some decent upside, especially Miles Sanders does not play in week 13. Let's talk about some guys that we're gonna have to wait on. So these are more, we're loading up for the playoffs. If you're set for the playoffs, you just want to like put some guys that have the ability to possibly just start booming these last 4 or 5 weeks of the season. And that is going to be guys like Chuba Hubbard. 50% available right now in ESPN leagues. He's a great ad for playoffs. We have seen him so far this season in relief of Christian McCaffrey while he was on injured reserve earlier in the season. Have some success. There is some trepidation though, right? We have Amir Abdullah, who has seemingly taken over that passing down role in Carolina. That lowers Chuba's floor quite a bit, quite significantly actually. And then when we think about out of the bye, he's got a great matchup with Atlanta. Awesome, great, cool. Out of the bye, we can use him right away. No questions asked. He's a guy that we can think about deploying, no problem. But the playoff run at Buffalo, Tampa Bay, at New Orleans, rough. So he is an ad. He is an ad for the playoffs. But to me, he's like a ad for the playoffs. You're stocking up on running backs, and he is the break glass in case of emergency guy. Because I just don't see in the playoffs you looking at that schedule and thinking, I want to play Chuba Hubbard. Another guy. This guy is interesting. Dontrell Hilliard. 33% rostered. So he's out there right now in 66% of ESPN leagues. He is another guy that's an ad for playoffs, specifically in PPR formats. He did get, 12 rushes, though, in week 12. So he is getting work in between the tackles. They're kind of breaking up that huge workload. At least they did in week 12. The Tennessee Titans did in that normal, huge Derrick Henry workload. They kind of broke it in between Dontrell Hilliard and Foreman in favor of Foreman as far as the rushing touches. But Hilliard had the 68-yard touchdown run, so he showed what the big play upside is. So to me, in week 11, he had the 8 catches. In week 12, only 1 catch. So he does show the volatility there as far as what his passing upside can be to what the passing floor can be. So there is a lot of value sway in Dontrell Hilliard, but he had such a big week, basically the last 2 weeks in PPR, that he does raise the eyebrows. They're going into a bye, it possibly is going to be a 3-headed monster coming out of the bye. So he's a ad with the idea of let's see how the pecking order is established coming out of the bye. Is he still going to be a guy that's going to get 12 to 14 touches in a game, in which case in a PPR format, he could be useful because a lot of those touches probably are going to come on passing downs. Another guy to talk about long-term, looking to stock that playoff stable is Foreman. This is more of a half PPR standard guy, right? Because he really has not had much of a passing game role. However, he does look like it's possible. He's the early downs guy. He ran 19 times for 109 yards in week 12. He did fumble the ball, but so did Hilliard. So it's not like that really moved him down the pecking order. And Hilliard just had such a big game. They both had big games, and right now with the wide receiving corps the way it is, they do want to run a lot. So it is good for the idea that, we got Brown on IR, Julio's on IR. You got Hakeem Westbrook, as their lead wide receiver or something. It's a mess in Tennessee in that wide receiving core. They don't have any tight ends to throw to, so it's just let's run the shit out of the ball. Maybe they'll start dumping the ball off to Hilliard, right? Giving him some value in the PPR format, and you guys have some really good, solid flexes, RB2 backups going into the playoffs. Some guys that, are really worth mentioning, well, that's going to be Devin Singletary. It looks like it's possible that he has established that lead back role in Buffalo. I think he's a guy that 100% should be rostered. It is a good offense. I'm not going to go ahead and say that it's like a juggernaut the way it was in 2020, but it is a good offense in 2021. The running backs have seemed to have more value in 2021 than they did in 2020. So I do like that. A lot of that with they're not having Josh Allen run as much, making the running backs more valuable. Devin Singletary, we have seen the upside of him in the past. He just hasn't gotten the work. Now, if they're going to give him roughly about 60 to 65% of the touches, then I like him. I like him moving forward as a guy that could possibly be a low-end RB2 or a flex. So Devin Singletary, specifically in PPR formats, is a guy that I think should be 100% rostered across the board. Another guy that I think has moved into possible flex value is Matt Breida. He's kind of acquired that change of pace role. We've seen that Zack Moss has fallen out of favor there. Matt Breida has, he's gained favor, and he looks pretty good. So I like Matt Breida as a guy that you can bring in, put on your bench, and possibly use as a flex, once again, specifically in PPR, because he is a guy that has been catching a few balls here and there, and he has shown some playmaking ability inside the red zone the last couple weeks. Jarrett Patterson, a guy that you should keep your eye on. He, may be stepping into a bigger role. I don't know how much more they can put in on Antonio Gibson. He has been dealing with that shin injury. Granted, he has looked much better out the bye, and they have been trusting him with the workload out of the bye. But like I said, I don't know how much more they could put on him. And if J.D. McKissic isn't going to be dealing with an injury, still no word of whether he's going to be able to play week 13, but that kind of opens the door for Jarrett Patterson for anybody who is desperate enough to just throw any warm running back into their lineup. And Phillip Lindsay is a guy that I think is a guy that is kind of a wait and see or add and speculatively, as he is a guy that, was the most efficient running back between the tackles for the Dolphins. Not saying much, but he did immediately walk into a solid role in Miami. We can see him maybe growing into a bigger role and maybe even be useful in the playoffs. So he's a guy that I think is a decent speculative add for anybody that's trying to bolster that running back lineup heading into the playoffs. Some guys that you can kind of cut loose, I think. Zack Moss, 62% rostered. This guy, to me, healthy scratch in week 12. He's basically lost his position to Matt Breida and has shown zero upside since the first couple weeks. Week 2 through 4 or 5, he looked pretty good, but since then it's been a steady decline. And then last week, Buffalo said, why the fuck are we even dicking around with this guy? So he's a guy that I think can be safely dropped. Another guy I think 55% rostered that can be safely dropped is Mike Davis. This is unfortunate. We all had such high expectations for this guy heading into, the season, but he just has not lived up to the mark. Cordarrelle Patterson has a firm control now of the backfield, basically the only playmaker in that offense. And why would you even consider playing Mike Davis over Cordarrelle Patterson if you're Atlanta? In that case, why would you consider putting Mike Davis in your lineup? We're talking about a guy who has not scored 12 or more PPR points since week 5. That's right. Hasn't scored 12 or more PPR points since week 5. 14 touches the last 2 weeks. Bye-bye. Mike Davis, you can go bye-bye. Another guy that can be safely dropped, in my opinion, is Alex Collins, 40% rostered. He's another guy. I don't want anything to do with the Seattle backfield. I honestly don't want much to do with Seattle at all. Obviously, I'm not getting rid of DK, and I'm not getting rid of the passing game assets, but I'm not interested in the running game at all. Alex Collins is not scored more than 5.9 PPR points since week 6. He's virtually no work in this passing game, which is virtually non-existent anyways. They're just a fucking mess. Seattle's a mess. It's unfortunate for everybody here in the Northwest. I don't give a fuck. I think it's hilarious. You guys can all fucking suck it and live in the land of losing, the land of suck with me, because that's what I've been dealing with since 2015. So whatever, it is what it is. Thank you very much for watching. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Like I said, I'm just trying to grow that subscription list so I can keep bringing you awesome content throughout the offseason, get you guys prepared for 2022, because guess what? I'm already looking forward to 2022 as I'm focusing on my playoff run as well. Thank you very much. And by the way, if you want to get any start-sit questions, I will be joining 1080 The Fan this weekend for the Fantasy Scramble. It is at 9:30 a.m. Pacific time. You can text in your questions at 503-250-1080 and listen online at odyssey.com. I will have a link in the description below. Thank you again for watching.